Hey everybody, this is me, the Undead Viking, and this is Anno Domini 1666. This is a, well, you know, when the game was described to me, it was described as a war game to me. I guess technically it kind of is. I don't really consider it a war game. I consider it like a miniature skirmish battle game, if you will. It is set in kind of an alternative history of Vienna in the 17th century, as the 1666 delineates. And it is a game in which it's kind of however you want to play it. If you want to have just straightforward battles between you and another player, you can go ahead and draft your little band of adventurers or band of mercenaries or whatever, and you can go at it against each other. Or there are, in this like playbook or scenario book, there are several different scenarios that you can race through and battle against each other and try to follow a storyline and try to succeed in different things. I found the adventures to be really cool, and I also did some of the battles as well. And I thought just the straightforward beat each other up type of thing. I found those both to be enjoyable, but I probably like the narrative of the adventures. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, regardless, the game is a card-based game. So you are going to have cool little minis and whatever that are going to fight. But you are going to use a deck of cards that are going to be in 4 different suits. Not like standard, like the ones you're thinking of. It's like skulls and cups and horseshoes and hearts. Yes, yeah, hearts. So you're going to use those cards to power your different abilities and test different skills. But you're going to be using kind of like the luck of the draw, as well as the cards that you have in your hand to kind of determine how well you do. But I've kind of given you a real vague notion of the game, so let me show you how the game is played. I'm just going to run through a portion of one of the scenarios to kind of give you an idea of the mechanisms, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so this is a scenario that is presented in the playbook that I received for Anno Domini. And this was like the very basic scenario that kind of like to get you into the game and how it works. I'm going to talk about other scenarios and some of the other added rules that they have, probably my conclusion. But I just wanted to do this just so I could show you how the combat works and how the activations work and how you're just going to process the miniatures warfare that you're going to be going through. At the beginning, you will get like a setup and a scenario. You don't have to do adventure scenarios. This is what's called an adventure scenario. You can just do flat-out battles, and there are rules for those as well. But these I liked more, I think, because of the narrative that's going on. I think they're kind of cool, and it was kind of fun and more cinematic in a way for me. So you might notice that some of the bases denote the different sides in this thing. What this is, the idea behind this is that the heroic musketeers have come to this tavern because they were supposed to meet an agent that was there who had a special letter for them. And when they got there, the person had been killed, and D'Artagnan here found the letter on the dead person's body. And at that moment, the front door burst open, and the King's loyal guard, or you kind of have to, if you're familiar with the Three Musketeers and how the story behind it, you know that it's kind of difficult sometimes to see who's like the bad guy or the good guy or whatever, but regardless, they've burst in and they want the letter for whatever reason. So the whole point of this is that the person with the letter is trying to get off the board. Now normally you'd have a huge map, as you can see. In this particular scenario, you just have this quadrant is the side. And you can theoretically win by killing all of the other players, and then obviously you'd have the letter that the D'Artagnan has right now. But if you can make it off the board, you're going to get a lot of victory points for that. And this is like like a victory point game. You'll get 2 points for killing an enemy hero. Heroes, and they're kind of tough to tell, and I do apologize for that, but the miniatures I got, which are cool and all, like, here's this guy with this two-handed sword, and he's kind of cool and everything like that, and that's this guy here, Longinus, but, they're kind of tough to tell who they are. But anyway, so there's 3 heroes for the red side, here, here, and here. They have their 2-leg flunkies, which are their dragoons, and then we have D'Artagnan, and then we have Athos, or Athos, I should say. Well, they called him Athos. I always thought he was Athos, but, regardless. And Athos is here, and then they have 2 King's Musketeers, here and here. Now, the blue side is kind of at a disadvantage, so their whole goal is to run as fast as they can and get out of there and get the letter out, because if they can get the letter out, it's going to be worth 5 victory points. If you kill an enemy hero, it's worth 2 victory points, and if you kill or make a commoner, which would be the dragoons or the musketeers, flee, that's worth make them flee is 1 victory point. Now here's the kind of the crux of this problem, is that this particular scenario, this is like a city, right? So the problem is that if there's battles going on and people are dying and people are running out into the street fleeing from combat, or gunfire is happening, an alarm is going to be raised, and so we have these alarm tokens, and this is very specific to this particular scenario. But every time, so if there's gunfire, you remove one of those tokens and you take it off there. If somebody runs off in the street, you remove one of those tokens. So it's kind of a neat little narrative of and once those tokens are gone, it's over. You don't like, okay, we're going to finish this one last turn. No, the scenario is over. You figure out who has the most victory points. And if you're tied with the victory points for this particular scenario, whoever happens to have the letter will be the winner. So that's how that works. Now, before I get any further, I just want to kind of show you what the cards have. So here's D'Artagnan's card here. I'm just going to pick him up. So here's D'Artagnan's card, and it's kind of cool. As far as I really like the art. It's very realistic art. I suppose they could have gone cartoony or something like that, but I because this is an alternate history type of situation, I really enjoy that. So you can see they'll give you his special abilities, and I'll talk about special abilities here in just a little bit. His starting equipment, in this case he starts with the rapier. His skill with the rapier is 3, and so he's going to add that to his attacks. Notice that there are no dice. You see there's no dice on the board? All of the actions, everything that you do is totally card-based, which is something I really enjoyed. It was a neat little twist. Don't get me wrong, I like dice, but I liked how the cards were used in this game. Alright, so then you can see over here, it might be tough to see, but you can see there's a 5 and an 8 there. So 8 is, if he takes 8 wounds, he's dead. He's gone, done, you remove him from the board. If he takes 5 wounds, he's crippled, and he takes a -1 to all of his actions. That'll make more sense here in just a little bit, but, you'll understand it here in just a moment or two. So then there's the 3 stats. There's a strength, there's an agility, and there's a fortitude. And all of those will come into play at certain points. Strength is used to maybe somebody's holding, if the door's locked, you can use it to break down. Agility is used a lot to give you some extra movement points, so you can actually get around the board. Fortitude is used for lots of things, but mostly you're going to be using it with your commoners to make them be brave and not run from the battle after they get hurt. This little stat over here, this fencing stat, gives him 1 parry token. And so when you're in close combat and you lose a combat, you're able to flip the token over, and you get to refresh them, but you get to flip the token over, and then you are allowed to basically try to parry the successful attack that was made to you. But I'll talk about that also when we get talking about combat here in just a little bit. Then there also, shows that he has the 2 hands, so you can actually equip, different weapons in those hands, those sorts of things. It's a nice setup. I really like how they do it. Oh, and I also mentioned there's these 2 things. So it says pistols and long rifles or whatever, he has a 0 skill. Now, you're like, well, why would they bother saying 0 skill? Well, the thing is that if you don't have the skill, you actually have a negative to use those weapons if you should get a hold of them during this scenario. It's always good to have a 0 in a skill than no skill, because then at least you don't have a negative to the action. Now I just wanted to show you, like, so Athos here, I'm not going to pick him up and show you his character card, but I just wanted to show you like 2 things he has. So he has a rapier, and then these little 2 dots are like weapon superiority. If you are fighting against somebody that has a weapon with higher weapon superiority than you, they get a bonus to their attacks. If you're even, it is just nothing. And then so it's one of those things where you get a bonus if your weapon is a better weapon. So like, for example, I'm going to see, I think one guy has a slightly better weapon if I remember correctly, but I'll look for it here in a second. But the big thing over here is that these are like the 4 different places that you can target as far as successful hits: head, chest, arms, and legs. Now, it doesn't really make a lot of sense looking at there, because those are those are the different suits of the cards that you're going to be using. It will make a lot more sense later on. But here, this is the kind of thing where it's like, here's his armor. He has this sleeveless buff coat, and notice how it gives no protection again to the head or to the arms, but it gives slight protection to legs and to the chest. Now you can see there's this 2-1 and 1-0. Normally it gives like 2 protection, so against an attack, unless it's an armor piercing attack, in which case that will be a 1, and that's like 1 and 0. So it would give 1, and then it gives an armor piercing attack, it would give a 0. All right. So each character, when you draft them into your band, and there's lots of rules about how, and I'll touch on that in a little bit, probably my conclusion, but you draft a band of people together. They could be mercenaries, they could be loyal to your cause, whatever, and you draft those into your like adventuring party or your group, and then you're going to go ahead and set up the scenario as per the rules that the scenario is given. Oh, here, I wanted to show you, like, here is a glaive, which is like a really, big giant polearm. Notice how it has like the 3 dots, so it has lots of weapon superiority, and look how it like does extra damage, or as far as like, or extra power, depending upon the different spots that are on there as far as the attack locations. But, and I should have mentioned that also when I showed you like the rapier, like they have those stats as well, for bonuses against those spots. But anyway, so depending upon the scenario, it might tell you which side goes first. In this case, in this battle, red goes first. But a lot of times what will happen is that it'll say, you'll have to determine initiative. And after the first round in this particular scenario, you will have to determine initiative. Now, before I dive into that, I'm actually getting ahead of myself just a little tiny bit. So each player gets a deck of cards. There's these 30 cards here in this deck, and they have different numbers on them, and they have these different suits. And you can see there's also 2 jokers in there. Just remember this: black joker, bad. Where my red joker is, red joker, good. So just just keep in mind. So red joker, good. And I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But the big thing is that for initiative, you'll have a hand of cards, and you'll have a choice between either playing a card out of your hand to determine initiative, or drawing a card randomly from the top of your deck to determine initiative. And then the other player, if they both draw a card randomly from the top, so if you compared like a 6 and a 7, the 7 would go first. Pretty, once again, pretty straightforward, but just that's what. Now, you might say, well, why would you draw a card from the top of your deck? You're going to be doing that a lot, actually. Whenever there is a uncontested skill check, you will have to draw directly from your deck. Uncontested skill checks will occur a lot for different agility moves, your morale checks for your commoners when they get hurt, plus just different scenarios will ask you to do certain things that you'll have to check different skills against. The thing about that is that, remember, you're going to start with 3 cards in your hand, and then at the beginning of each turn you only get to draw 2, and your maximum hand size is always going to be 5 cards. There's going to be lots of times when you aren't going to want to play one of the cards in your hand because you want to save it for something. Or maybe the cards in your hand aren't good enough to succeed at what you want to do, so you're going to be forced to draw a card from your deck. You always have the option to draw a card from your deck. Now, you will reshuffle your deck, because the highest number in the deck is an 8. And whenever you have a total of 4 8s and jokers in your discard pile. So you could have 3 8s and a joker. At that point, you pick up all the cards and you reshuffle them, including the cards in your hand. If you have 3 cards in your hand, you shuffle all of them together and you redraw 3 cards. But you will then reshuffle. You don't have a thing where you have to get through the entire deck before you reshuffle and go. All right. So in this case, as I said, red, the King's Loyal Guard or what have you, are going to go first. And you're going to have to make decisions as far as which character you're going to activate. Now, this game does progress in the classic you go, I go fashion. So red will activate a figure, and then blue will activate a figure, and then red will activate a figure, and so on and so forth. Now, the one different catch here is, if there is a side that has fewer heroes, or fewer figures, so in this case there are 4 heroes, 4 blue heroes to 5 red. When you get down to your last hero, and the other player has, so in this case, so like let's say we activated him, and then activated him, then activated him, and activated him, so now D'Artagnan's left. And there's 2 left there. You have the option to pass as the person that has less characters and allow the other player to activate their figures before you go. So you aren't forced into an action and then you have to watch them do something, if that makes sense. So it is a very tactile decision where you can kind of see where they go, and then you can activate your character and figure depending upon and react to what they have done. But for the most part, what you're going to be doing is just activating one, and then the other person will activate one. Now, the big thing in this is you're going to have to look at the different scenarios. So in this scenario, we want to get that, right? And so one of the big things that I want to do is I want to make sure that I block this back door, but I also want to make sure that I can get in the way. Now, there's a couple of things. You might have noticed these doors. This door is open because the men are charging into the tavern right now. But there are these windows as well. And so this door, is a way that D'Artagnan can get out. D'Artagnan can also try to climb out this window. So it is in my best interest to make sure that he does not have an easy access to get to that spot and do what he wants. Because if he can get through that window and he can escape out the alleyway, I'm going to have problems. So what I want to do is I want to activate probably one of my heroes over here first, get him into this spot, basically block that exit, or at least get him into this alleyway to do it. So when you activate, one of the very basic things you can do when you activate is you can move. Now, and remember, I could possibly, like if I can get one of my dragoons into there, I could take a shot and I could shoot at one of the opponents. That's a great idea, but remember, every time I shoot a gun, I'm going to use up one of these alarm tokens. I don't have, as the red player, I don't have the letter yet. That's not a good idea. I don't want to make a lot of noise. I don't want the alarm tokens to be gone. So, when you activate, you can go forward. Now, you are going to use orthogonal movement when you do this. The only difference is that if you actually try to do what's called a sprint. So I could go 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm by that window. I'm blocking that door. I have my character ready to go and you know, just in case something happens. Now, in this case, this is probably like the best character that I have. I'm just going to show you. I have, you know, I can't even. It's like Volodyoski. So he is probably like he's a very good fencer. You know, he's got his saber and he's got some good abilities, and he's got 1 agility. Now, if I wanted to, what I could do is I could like do what's called a sprint action instead of a normal move action. A sprint action is a test, an agility test of 5, and you know, Volodyoski has an agility of 1. So what I can do, I can draw the top card to test that skill. This is like, remember, this is an uncontested check, and I'm going to look. And I mean, I already knew this was a 6, so it's kind of cheating a little bit. But so I can add his agility of 1 to the top of this, and that would make it a 7. So when you defeat, when you best the score in a sprint, you then get 2 extra movement points. Now, if there is something called a triumph when you succeed, and there's also a misfortune when you make a test as well. When you beat the level that, you know, like, so the level of that check was a 5. If you beat the level by 5 or more, it's called a triumph. If you fail it by 5 or more, it's called a misfortune. Now, in this case, in a misfortune, you actually like trip and you fall on the ground. Even if you fail, however, on a sprint, you get 1 extra movement point. In this case, because I succeeded, I get 2 extra movement points. So what I could do is I can use those movement points. I can actually affect the world. So I could actually use that to like open up the door if I wanted to. So now I can actually see into the room and I can see what's going on. And, you know, so that's just one of the things I can do with testing my agility in that case. All right, so that is, both movement and sprinting are considered to be full actions. When you activate a character, you either take a full action or you take 2 partial actions. So I just want to actually tell you, you can also, if you are, you can take a full action, can be taking a defensive shot. Now, I think I have 1 character that would actually work for, and that is actually Longinus right here, because he has a cavalry pistol. He has this little 1-shot weapon. So the way this works, this is kind of neat. So what if on the other player's turn, they decided, on Blue's turn, they decided, I'm going to move Athos, and I'm going to move him up here to attack Longinus. Now, melee combat does not happen yet. That was their full action. They've moved up, they've activated. Now, on my turn, what I could do is I could take a full action to do what's called a defensive shot. Now, if you're going to do a defensive shot, you have to have a ranged weapon that is ready to fire, meaning that it's loaded, and the weapon has to be one-handed. Now, technically, if you have cover, like, you know, you had that table in front of you, or you had like a doorway or something like that, you could use a 2-hand weapon, but I do have. So now, since this is kind of cool, and I'm going to actually show this, and I want to show you how ranged combat works, I'm going to show you like how you would do a ranged attack. Alright, so let's look at that cavalry pistol again. Alright, so what it has here is that it is a there's 2, like, this little thing right there, that little it kind of looks like a megaphone with 2 little dots next to it. That means that once I shoot this, it has a 2-pip reload, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But the 2 things that are important are the 6 and the 12. The 6 means a range of 6. That means a range of 12. If I'm shooting at somebody in a range of 6, it is a 6. My level of my attempt that I have to beat is a 6, and this is a 7. Now, because this is a defensive shot, you add +1 to it, so my test level is going to be a 7 that I'm going to have to beat. So, in this case, what's going to happen is I have to look at my hand. Now, these are my cards that I have in my hand. A 6, a 6, and a 3. And you get 3 cards to start with, and technically at the beginning of each round you're supposed to draw 2, but you don't do that in the first round, so I didn't have an extra 2 cards. So there's a couple things here. So what happens here is that I could play this 6, and then technically I could play the other card here, or this other card as reinforcements. You can always reinforce one of your actions, one of your attacks or whatever, by using another card of the same suit or a card with the same value. If you use one with the same suit, you add 1 to it. If you use one with the same value, you add 2. But here's the deal. I would increase it to 8, meaning that it was a 7, and chances are I'm probably not going to do much damage. The reason why is because if I'm shooting at Athos, he has this armor. Remember that armor of 2 and 1? Now technically, because it is close range, you know, it's the little armor thing there, it means that it is armor piercing. But this is where it gets, once again, you're getting kind of tricky. If you used this, the first card you use is the location of the attack. So it would be attacking the body. So even if I then backed it up, and I know a lot of you are probably saying, wait a minute, you could use that card first, but just bear with me. I wanted to show you how this works. So if I use this, it would be an 8, it would be and then my test level is a 7, so the damage you do is determined by like the location that you have. Now, so let me just, so you have that as a 2 and 1. So then you're gonna knock it, you're gonna make it a 1 because of the armor piercing, but it's going to be down to a 0. However, you know, once again, let's go ahead and look at this thing. It is a bonus of 3. So that would work, right? I could do 3 points of damage to Athos, and that's not a bad idea, actually. But, again, this is one of my big hitters. This is one of my guys that has a big 2-handed sword, and, you know, I kind of want him to, you know, be able to, I want to be able to possibly use these cards in my hand when it is his turn in combat. And plus, you know, like using cards in combat helps prevent you taking damage as well. So I could take a gamble and just draw the top card. Now let me just see what happens. Let me see what I get here. So I would get a 3. So that would be a total of 3. I could technically add this to enforce it, and it would get up to a 5, but it wouldn't be enough to actually do the damage. So you can see the different decisions that you're probably going to make. I'm always, you know, it's one of those things where it's like you want to spend these because of the fact that they're a known quality and you know what you're going to be, you know what you have, and when you play them, but you're also hesitant to do so because of the fact that you kind of want to hold on to the cards that you have to use them in specific moments that, like when you want to guarantee yourself a certain successes, if you will. Regardless, let's say I did that, I drew this card, it didn't work, blam, the gun goes off, nothing happens. We're going to go ahead and we're going to remove one of these alarms. We're going to put that off to the side. Alright, so I'm going to I want to go through some partial actions that you can do as well, just so you have an idea of the different partial actions that you have capable of, and then I want to get into, I'm going to move the guys into spots so you can actually see how combat works. Alright, oh, and I should mention, so like when you shoot that, you take that little 2 pip here, and then you go ahead and you put that on the weapon that was used, so you know that it is, has been fired. You can then, as a full action, use a reload action to bring it down, turn it over to a 1 pip, and then use it again, and then you can go ahead and remove it entirely, then the gun can be used. Now some characters will have like a fast reload skill, and when they have that, they can go from the 2 pip side to removing it completely because of the fact that they can reload the gun faster. Alright, one other thing quickly is that you can, as a full action, put this Overwatch token on one of your units or one of your figures. What that does is it allows you to interrupt another action of another person as they're either doing it, or like right before they do it, or right after they do it. And the interrupt can be used to take a quick shot, to shoot, or to move your character. So just for example, like if I put it on one of like the musketeers that I have, and then say I had a situation where I moved like a player, and then he'd say, as soon as he gets there, I'm going to shoot him. So you could use that and remove the Overwatch token and go through the process of that action, if that's what you wanted. So those are all the full actions. Now, the partial actions are pretty straightforward. You can half move. And remember, you get 2 partial actions. So half move, you move 2 spaces. Usually you'll be doing a half move and then probably doing like what's called a quick shot. And that's another partial action you can do. You can, when you do a quick shot, you do get a -1 penalty to the test because you're not spending a lot of time to aim. But other than that, it's handled just like any other ranged combat. As a partial action, you can pick up an item. So if D'Artagnan got killed or knocked out or what have you, and you drop the letter, then you, in the same spot, you could pick up as a partial action. You can attempt to force open a door if any of them are locked or barred or what have you, and that is a test of strength, and the number you're looking for is a 7. And the final partial action you can take is just standing up, which might seem silly, but you will get knocked prone and knocked down due to lots of different things, and you just have to get up. Now, normally, if you were knocked prone in this location right here, you could just stand up because there's nobody around you. If you are engaged, meaning that somebody is near you, you actually have to make an opposed strength test against that other figure. And if there's more than one, you just pick one. And then to actually stand up because you're like wrestling around and shoving and what have you. All right. So now I'm just going to take a couple of seconds here in the magic of video editing to just move some characters around each other so I can show you how close combat works. Alright, so then I've gone ahead and set up like everybody in like battles, except for like this guy is waiting outside. He's going to fight whoever comes out or whatever. But the big thing with close combat is now that you have everybody kind of next to each other, anybody who's next to another figure that can theoretically attack them in hand-to-hand combat now has the option of being activated. When you activate, whoever has initiative, in this case it's still red, but they'll pick one of their figures and they will activate it. Then they have to decide if it's going to go forward with an attack. If you choose to go forward with an attack, you pick the figure that you're going to attack. You can, instead of attacking, go into what's called a defensive stance. You don't get any bonus for that whatsoever if you go into a defensive stance. You can still get attacked, you don't get a bonus to defend. But what happens when you do a defensive stance is you don't force a combat with another opponent that most likely would probably beat you down. So like in the case of like these musketeers, they have their musket and their sword, but their sword skill is pretty low. So if they're up against a powerful swordsman like Mr. Wojciechowski, as we've said, who's pretty good, you might not want to actually attack them because of the fact that you're basically inviting them to run you through with their sword. So the other thing is when you activate and then you choose the other figure, you actually activate that other figure, meaning you've kind of taken the option out of that person's hands. So like in this case where I've moved Longinus next to D'Artagnan, I'm going to say I'm activating Longinus and I'm going to attack D'Artagnan. So now D'Artagnan has been activated and can't be activated by this player. So, if they were going to say, like, for example, maybe like this character was in here. I'm going to move him away because I don't want him to be there. But like D'Artagnan really wanted to attack him. Maybe he was wounded and he wanted to finish him off. But because I'm going through the attack on him, he's not going to have that option. That's where initiative really comes into play a great deal of times. Now, and also whoever activates is considered to be the attacker. Now that doesn't really, have within it like any special bonus or anything like that. But it's just for the purposes of the game, there will be certain things that you'll have to recognize when they say the attacker gets this or what have you. So you'll know what's going on. So combat is pretty straightforward. You are just going to have an opposed test between you and the other player. Again, you'll have to pick a card from your hand, out of your hand, or draw one randomly from your deck to handle, and it's an opposed test. There are, however, several factors that you have to keep in mind if you're going to, doing close combat. So it is weapon skill will affect what's going on. The weapon superiority that we talked about earlier will affect what's going on. If you have another player, somebody on your side that is near the figure that you're next to, but they aren't presently engaged, you will get a bonus of +1 for that because that they're helping you fight. For example, let's say you activated this figure to attack this one. He would actually give a bonus because he's not engaged with anybody else. He's just engaged with him. But if you activated this figure to attack this one, he would not give the bonus because he is engaged with that character since they are adjacent. Pretty straightforward, and it makes sense, but it's something to keep in mind as you're doing it. If you happen to be prone or crippled, you're going to lose, you're going to have penalties as far as that goes. And sometimes there'll be things in the environment that will affect it. Also, it should be noted that sometimes players will be at different levels, and different maps will have rules for, people being on rooftops or, up on ridges or up on ladders and what have you. And so there will be certain aspects that you'll have to take into play as well. Alright, so the way it works then, as I said, it's just an opposed test. So each player will pick a card, and then they will reveal them at the same time. So let's just actually look here and see what we have. So Longinus, with his sword, he has 1 parry token, and he has a skill of 2 with this big 2-handed sword that he has. D'Artagnan has a skill of 3, and he has 1 parry token. So right now, he's got a 3, and he's leading. So what happens then is that each player is going to take a card, and they're gonna show it. So in this case, let's go ahead and we're gonna pick the 6. I mean, technically this would be face down, so they pick the 6, and because he wants to put D'Artagnan in the ground, he's gonna pick this 7. So they both reveal them at the same time, and then they're gonna go ahead and look and see what they have. So we have a 6, plus the 3, which is 9, and then the 7 plus the 2, which is also 9. So right now they're tied, but now both players have the option of going through and reinforcing. So and then the attacker will do it first. So we're gonna go ahead, and he's gonna drop another 7 on top of that. So adding 2 to the result, giving him a total of 11. So now we'll also put that down, and he'll have a total of 11. So this is probably an important situation to use up your cards because of the fact that you don't want D'Artagnan to take a bunch of damage. But here's the kicker. You can keep playing reinforcement cards, and as luck would have it, the red player had all 3 7s in his hand, so he goes up to a total of 13 compared to the 11. And for whatever reason, blue player chooses not to or can't upgrade or can't reinforce at this time, and so the winner of the combat is going to be Longinus in this situation. But this is where that parry token comes in. So you flip over the parry token like so and turn it over to this side, and you place that there to show that you're using the parry token. Now you can possibly not take this damage, and so the way parrying token is parry test, and these parry tests will just be done. The losing character performs an unopposed test against the DL, which the level of the test is equal to what you lost by, in which case this is 2 plus 1. And so you have to manage to defeat that. And now, remember, it's an unopposed test, so you have to draw a card from the top of the deck and hope for the best. So you get a 6, in which case he succeeded. And now, this is kind of crazy, what happens is that you get rid of all the cards that you used in the combat. They're over and done with. And you start up a brand new combat between those two players. So now, because I used up all of my cards as the red player, I have to just take a card and turn it over. And I'm going to get a 5, plus my skill of 2 is 7. But they have to do the exact same thing. They're going to get a 3. 3 plus their skill of 3 is 6. 6 to 7. I'm still going to win. Now, the interesting thing is that if they had gotten a card that actually had beaten me, I could use my parry token, flip it over, and then we do the same thing all over again. But in this case, so we're done. So I've beaten them by 1, meaning that I'm going to do 1 point of damage to D'Artagnan, but I'm going to go ahead and look at the two-handed sword that he has, and you look at the horseshoe, meaning that you are going to strike his legs, and so you're going to add 1 to that, and so you're going to do a total of 2 points of damage. He doesn't have any armor, and so then you're going to take these wound tokens and you're going to place those on D'Artagnan. He's not close to being dead by any means, but he has taken damage. Now, I've activated, now the blue player will get to activate one of their characters, and they go through the same process again. Once you are done with that whole process, now if there's any commoners that have been crippled, you make a fortitude check of level 5 for each of them, uncontested, to see if they run away. If they run away, you just remove them from the board. Oh, I just forgot. I forgot what was very important. The person that loses the combat actually is forced to retreat, and so they have to retreat orthogonally 1 space away from the spot they're at. So, like, most likely he would back up to there, so he'd be with his friends. And you can actually force people off the map, which in this case would be bad if you forced D'Artagnan off the map because he has the letter. But if you force another player off the map, in a lot of scenarios, what happens then is that they're just considered to be gone. They're not technically killed, but they're gone. They're not in the battle anymore, and you can force them to retreat off the map. All right, so thank you very much for kind of sitting through that whole process. I know it's a lot to take in, and trust me, the first time I played this, I was like, oh man, I mean, my mind was kind of boggling, and I was just like, all right, how do I do this? The biggest thing that you have to grasp in this is your cards. Your cards, you're almost always going to want to draw cards off the top of the deck. And the reason for that is just because, like I showed you, when we were actually using up our cards, yes, it was very important that you use those up, and like to get those special, make sure you have a good attacks, but you have such a finite amount that you have to save that for special situations. I mean, all those other combats are going to be just completely and totally random. You can kind of have an idea. You can go through your discard pile at any time, and you can have an idea of what cards are left. But for the most part, it is kind of the chaos and randomness of combat. Something that I really like, but it is something that you have to keep in mind as you're making your decisions. The only other thing I want to make sure I touch about, remember I told you red Joker is bad, A red joker's good, black joker's bad. So if you play a red joker, it has the value of 10, and it is considered to not only be a success, but it's considered to be a triumph. So it's kind of like a catch-all. And as you can probably guess, red joker bad, or black joker bad, means that it is not only its value of 0, and it's not only a failure, it is a misfortune. So those two cards are in there, and you are going to have situations where when you absolutely positively need good luck, you will get it, and when you the absolute worst possible times possible, you're going to draw that black joker. Something that I actually kind of like about the game. I like the swinginess of that. But anyway, let me talk more about that and more about like different scenarios and things like that in my final thoughts. Alright, thank you very much for learning how to play Anno, Domini. I hope you have a good idea of how the different like card mechanisms work. And you know, once you've done like a few of the tests, like whether they're uncontested or contested, it really becomes second nature. It isn't something where you're going to get bogged down very much. Yes, it's got a learning curve, just like all games do. You're going to have to get over those little speed bumps to kind of get rolling with the game. But trust me, once you've done like one battle, like one like turn or battles, and like done each one, you're gonna resolve those very quickly. So don't be intimidated by the scope of that. So and the thing is that I guess technically, if my 10-year-old daughter can pick it up and figure it out, then I think that anybody could. Technically, though, I mean, she did recently win like a Warhammer tournament locally, so maybe she's kind of geared towards that a little bit. But there's something about that actually. Warhammer, not that this is Warhammer by any means, but I mean, I probably would not have enjoyed this game as much as I had if I hadn't like been in a really competitive, really fun Warhammer skirmish tournament a few months back. Basically, like, instead of giant armies, it was something where like you had just this little band of heroes, and you and the other players would fight against each other, and I really liked that aspect about this. The fact that I had, you don't have to worry about giant groups of people. You just had these 3 or 4 plucky little heroes and their abilities and their strengths and weaknesses and whatever, and you just had to monitor those. And get them to where they needed to be, put them and utilize their strengths, hide their weaknesses, that sort of thing. And so, plus that really led into, like I said, as I mentioned, the narratives of the battles. It kind of like had the movie scenes rolling around in my head. And something that I think is a big plus. I mean, technically you don't need minis, right? To do these battles. You don't need a figure, but it adds so much more when you look at the board and you see them. Like you can actually see the tavern. You can smell the wine and the beer and the sounds and the fire and whatever. And so you kind of actually start living that out in your head. And so that's when like funny moments or exciting moments can play out, and you can actually enjoy those. Now, 2 things I want to make sure that I mention. One, there is a third deck that is used in some scenarios. They just call it the magic deck, and this has the numbers 9 through ace through it. And certain scenarios will have you draw from that deck, depending upon like what you'll need to do. So like here's like there's a grave robbers scenario, and like on it says that like what you have to do as far as like collecting these different markers that you're grave robbing for. And so you will draw the cards from this magic deck, and depending upon what cards you draw, it's going to tell you whether or not you're successful when you dig up a grave. And so it's just another deck of cards that won't be used during every single scenario, but it'll be used in a fair number of them, and it's just another right, instead of having dice basically determine, it's like your cards that you'll be used. And plus, in a way, the cards actually work, as I mentioned before, like you actually can see the discards, you can see the cards that have gone, you can kind of prognosticate your chances of that, like the next card, the possibility of it being successful for you. The other thing is that there's a wide range of characters. There are several different characters that have, like, I wouldn't want to say non-combat skills, but definitely skills that are going to be used for when you're not, like, stabbing each other and shooting each other. And because the scenarios, a lot of them have, like, certain aspects to them, like aspects where, like a certain side won't really know what's going on at first because of the fact that, like, the blue team is, like, incognito. You know, they're you know, being secretive, and so, like, you don't, and the scenario, you know, explains it better than I'm explaining right now, but so you will have, like, non-combat situations that other characters, that they'll have skills that will shine and that will come through. And so I really liked that. I mean, because of the fact that, you know, there's a lot of different games out there that are all about, you know, just combat and shooting and stabbing and slicing and whatever. And those are great. I have a lot of fun with those. I like combat games. But it's like they really tried to say, let's kind of make this a role-playing game too. And yeah, I know it's very, very tough, and I don't think I've ever really truly found a role-playing feel in a board game yet. Anyway, you know, I don't think you can. I mean, you just really can't. You can get aspects, but you just can't get it right. But you know, I liked the endeavor. I liked the fact that it wasn't all about, you know, gunpowder and blades. And it added, like, an extra level of complexity and narrative, once again, the thing that I really like, to a game that, you know, didn't really technically need it, but it was just kind of like the cherry on top of the whipped cream, if you will. So that's something about it that I really, really liked. You know, the bottom line is that it's just fun. I like how the combat plays out. I like the cards being the resource for, like, do I draw randomly? Do I play one out of my hand? You know, and there is something to be said about, you know, playing it loose by drawing cards out of the deck and getting a lot of cards in your hand, a lot of good cards in your hand. Before you have your big turn, and then using, like, getting some big cards, getting some cards that match up with suits or values, and using those for a big turn when it comes up. So there's aspects of that I really like as well, and you can definitely completely change the flow of the combat if you are able to do that, which is something that, you know, I had some success with when I played the game. So the setting is really cool. I like alternative history. I like taking something that was real and, like, twisting it up and changing it up a little bit. Like I said, it seems imposing at first, but once you get that first round of combat down, you realize how the cards work. You just clip along, and the mechanics don't get in the way of the fun, which is something I think you need in games like this. So if you are a miniatures battle gamer, I guess, and technically I guess it's a war game, but if you are a fan of this type of game, I strongly suggest you check this out. It's a lot of fun. The miniatures look amazing, and I think you will really enjoy the scenarios and the battles that are included in the play. And this is just a small smattering of what I got. I mean, I know that they've got more and more stuff. Go ahead and check out the Kickstarter page. I'm sure you can track that down. So there you go. If you have any questions about the game, please ask away. I'll be happy to answer those as best as I can. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. And until next time, I'm the Undead Viking, and I'm telling you to have yourself one heck of an awesome day. All right. Bye-bye.